Hey, Zach here to talk about the Ku Klux Klan and its role in American history as it relates to religion and violence. So, to start with an introduction, um, basically, the Ku Klux Klan, or the KKK as it's more commonly known, was formed in the aftermath of the American Civil War in 1865. It began as a secret society of Confederate veterans, and what started as a social club very quickly turned into a violent movement that promoted white supremacy. Members believed they were defending Christian civilization against the changes that Reconstruction brought, especially the empowerment of formerly enslaved African Americans. And they used religious symbols such as burning the cross and their white robes um, to portray themselves as holy warriors. But in truth, these symbols became instruments of fear and terror for a large portion of the African American population and America as a whole. And by claiming divine approval for their actions, the Klan masked their racial and violent agenda behind a facade of religious duty. So now, how I learned about the KKK, I don't remember the exact time that I learned about it, but more generally, I learned about the KKK through elementary, middle, and high school, just through general history classes talking about Reconstruction and civil rights, and then my investigation into the KKK for this presentation has really deepened my understanding of the impacts of the group and how it started and how it's been able to, or how it was able to propagate such a harmful and violent message through the use of Christianity. Okay, now for a quick background and summary. So, the Ku Klux Klan's history can be divided into three main groups. The first is when the Klan was formed in 1865, when they sought to overthrow the Reconstruction governments and restore white political control in the South. And then a second form of the Klan emerged in the 1910s and the 1920s, and they expanded their racial agenda to include immigrants, Catholic, and Jews, in addition to the Black Americans that they had been previously discriminating against. And this version reached millions of members and held major political influence across the United States. And then a third resurgence of the KKK came during the Civil Rights era of the 1950s and 60s, when Klan members bombed churches, attacked activists, and violently resisted integration. Today, while the Klan's group is fragmented and small, unfortunately some of their ideologies still exist and persist through the use of digital platforms and online cults. Okay, so now to talk about some of the central themes and characteristics of the KKK. So religion is kind of central to understanding the Klan's violence and how they operated. Members portrayed themselves as defenders of Christianity, and that they were of divine order to see the KKK's actions through, and they claimed that racial segregation and white dominance were part of God's plan. So rituals like the cross burning, like I previously mentioned, and initiation ceremonies created a sense of religious mission and belonging against members. And they used church-like hierarchies, prayers, and hymns to frame their hatred as holy work. So they linked faith with fear and transformed religion into a weapon, basically to justify their social control and their terror. So some similarities to other violence or other religious violence. So they share many features with other forms of religious violence throughout history, such as the Crusades or modern extremist movements that claim that violence is a sacred duty. In all these cases, religion provides both the motivation and kind of the moral cover for the acts that contradict the core teachings of compassion and justice. So each movement used sacred language to divide people into the pure and impure, believers and enemies. By doing this, they stripped away empathy and allow cruelty to be seen as just. Okay, so now for some key differences between other forms of religious violence. So it's distinct because it arose within a dominant social and religious framework rather than outside it. So most examples of religious extremism come from revolutionary groups, but the Klan represented an established like Protestant majority, and their violence was to preserve existing racial and cultural power, not to challenge oppression. So other forms of religious violence would be like a small religious group trying to overthrow a larger government, but here we have a large religious group just trying to maintain control. So the Klan's message was one of exclusion, where they maintained the Protestant dominance by framing it as a divine will from God. And this makes it a unique example of religious violence used to maintain this privilege rather than resist persecution. Okay, so looking forward, the Klan's influence has greatly diminished, but the ideology is still lingers in American culture, particularly in online forums and more secretive cult-like groups in the online space. So the internet has kind of allowed these groups to recruit anonymously and by spreading propaganda to younger audiences. But thankfully, our education, our growing education on racism and religious violence has helped to really kill off the group as a whole. So in short, the Ku Klux Klan remains a very clear example of how religion can be distorted to justify violence. So by claiming to act in God's name, the Klan was able to merge racial ideologies with faith to create a very, very destructive narrative. And the Klan's legacy reminds us of how dangerous it can be when religion is used to divide rather than unite. So ultimately, history urges us to use religion as a source of compassion and peace, and to prevent it from being used as a weapon of fear and division.